to start today in Matthew 5:16. And in the little black Bibles, if you didn't bring your Bible today and you want to follow along with us in Matthew 5:16, is on page 1143, the New Testament. So 1143, Matthew 5:16 is where we're going to start. And our theme for today, 5:16. Our theme for today is service. Let me make sure my glasses are clean because I cannot do this today without my glasses. I even put part of it in large print, but apparently it wasn't in large print enough when I wrote my Bible verses, so I can't see what I'm doing. So, Matthew 5:16 says, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works, and glorify your Father in heaven." You know, our good works don't get us to heaven, but people on earth, the only way they can see Jesus is through our good works. That's the only way. And so we're talking today about working and serving. Now you probably picked up on this, but I'm from the South, and I'm from Tennessee, and I even often say to my kids, I say, who's going to be a Tennessee volunteer and come do such and such? I'll say to them, who's going to be a Tennessee volunteer? Because I am proud to be a Tennessee volunteer. The only time I have not been proud to be a Tennessee volunteer is this past year. The Vols football fans decided to throw stuff at the referees. Now, I probably didn't agree with referees either, but you don't throw stuff at the referees. So that kind of made me ashamed of being a Tennessee volunteer. But that's the only time I've ever been ashamed of being a Tennessee volunteer. And so you might wonder how they got that name. Well, it started during the War of 1812. The Tennessee had been admitted to the Union just shortly before the 1800s, and they were only 15 years in of being a state, and they were proud to be a state. I mean, back then, Tennessee was the wilderness. It was the backwoods. It was kind of like Antarctica. There wasn't anything there. You know, that's the way it was. It was in the backwoods. And so the people were pretty proud of being admitted to the state. And when they asked for volunteers, 1,500 soldiers stepped up to volunteer to help defend the Union during the War of 1812. And most of them fought in the decisive Battle of New Orleans, which was the end of the war. And they were led by General Andrew Jackson. He was their leader. He's from Tennessee. And they helped to defeat the British and drive the British away and helped end the War of 1812. So that kind of gave them a little bit of a reputation of being volunteers. But a little bit later, when the Mexican-American War was happening in 1846, do you guys remember Davy Crockett? Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. He was from Tennessee. He was also a senator, or, well, he might have been a representative, but I think he was a senator from Tennessee. And he went to the Alamo to help defend Texas. He believed that Texas should have the right to be a state, should have its freedom from Mexico, so he went and helped, and he died in that battle. Well, that made Tennessee mad. You don't make Tennessee mad. Somebody asked for 28 volunteers. They asked 2,800 volunteers to leave from Tennessee and go and help fight in Texas. You know how many went? 30,000.
Home state.
Yeah, whole state. Got up and left and went. And they helped defeat defeat Santa Anna, and they helped Texas gain their independence, and it became a very close relationship between the state of Texas and the state of Tennessee. And after that, they were known as the Tennessee Volunteers. That's how they got their name. So when I ask my kids, I need somebody to be a Tennessee volunteer, I'm expecting them to step up and do something, to step up and serve. Now, we have been on this journey with Mary for a year now. How many of you have been enjoyed learning about the life of Mary and the things that she was learning as well. So we've been on this journey, and one of the things that we kind of overlooked, that we didn't even really think about until we actually changed the theme for today. We had a different theme for today. And we actually changed the theme, and when we started thinking about it, we were thinking about Mary and service. And if you look at Luke chapter 1, and that is on page 1219, Luke chapter 1, you can see the very second thing she says to the angel shows us that Mary was a servant. It's Luke 138, it's on page 1219. And she says, well, first of all, is service easy? Always? Is it always easy to serve? No. And Mary got asked to do something really hard. She was going to completely lose her reputation as a good, upright, holy woman, which apparently she was known as because God knew her as that. He knew that's what she was. But the angels come and told her that she's going to have a baby, and she was like, how? Just explain to me what's going to happen. And so the angel explains to her, and the last thing he says to her is, with God, nothing shall be impossible. That's what he says. And her response to nothing's impossible, her response is, behold, the handmaid of the Lord. What's a handmaid? Handmaid is a servant. So her attitude from the very beginning was an attitude of service. And it didn't stop there. You see later in John at the marriage of Cana. And obviously Mary must have been serving at that wedding. Has anybody ever helped serve at a wedding, or helped set up a wedding, or help clean up a wedding? It's not easy. I mean, it takes work. And she obviously was serving at the wedding because she knew there was no wine. She knew it was gone. So she had to have been helping. And what does she do? She includes her family. She goes and finds her son. And she says, guess what? They have no wine. Now, this happened to us recently. We were at the Hope for America celebration when they did the family night, and we realized they didn't have any hot dogs. So guess what Avery did? Got sent to the store. So off he goes to the store, picks up the hot dogs and the hot dog buns, comes back and helped because they'd run out of hot dogs. So she called on her son to help. Now, he wasn't ready for it to go public. He wasn't ready to go viral yet, so he's like, don't, I know I can do it, but let's not make a big deal out of it. And so, he fixes the solution. He has them bring water, turns the water to wine, it works. But she included her family. And then she continued to serve with her family. Now, I'm going to tell you, I can't prove this, but I think these verses in Matthew 27 show us that Mary was still with Jesus, helping serve. It says in there that it was Mary, the mother of Joseph, and, well, it's Joseph, but that's Joseph, and it might be Jude, James and Joseph. Okay, well, two of Jesus' brothers are James and Joseph. That's two of his brothers. So it says that, and then it says a few verses later that they were waiting and watching where they laid Jesus to rest. Now, if it was your boy who was getting buried, wouldn't you be there? Right? Okay. And then a few days later, in a few verses later, we read that there was a Mary who came with spices. She came with Mary Magdalene with spices to anoint the body of Jesus. So wouldn't you think that would be his mom, right? So that's my conclusion, is that Mary that it's talking about in Matthew is Mary, the mother of Jesus. And what it says in those verses is that there were women there watching who had ministered unto Jesus and his disciples, basically. So Why would they have done that? Well, how many men you know, I mean, my husband is the exception, but how many men you know are proficient at laundry? Yeah, there's a few of them, but it's not an overwhelming thing. And especially if they're busy, are they proficient at laundry? No. Did Jesus have time to do laundry? He barely had time to eat and sleep. So I suspect that there were people following, helping with the laundry. I suspect that the ladies who were following were helping with the meals. And so they were serving together as a family. And so my challenge for you today is to serve, figure out where you can serve, and serve with your family. You know, there is a war raging today. We're in a war, and it seems like the closer we get to the end of time, the more obvious the war is. Does that make sense to you? You don't even want to read the news anymore. You don't want to look on your phone at the news app anymore because it's just disgusting to see what's going on in the world. And so there's a battle on, and those who know Jesus are enlisted in the army of the Lord. Everyone in the army has a job, and when Jesus calls for volunteers, do you step forward? That's what I'm asking you today. Do you step forward? Remember, Joshua said, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." So serving is not just reading your Bible and praying every day. It involves work. It involves doing something. And so that's what we're talking about today. Now, okay, a few of my verses are lost on the paper. So if you take this home and you go through it again and read through the verses, you may be like, Mrs. Parker, that verse has nothing to do with that paragraph. Sorry. A few of them are lost on the paper. And I ran completely out of ink because I'm working on my son's board for graduation, which is due tomorrow. And in fact, I went through 2 black ink cartridges. That's why it's blue. Mine is blue. I mean, yours might be black where we copied it, but mine's blue because that's what color ink I had. So I didn't reprint it, but some of the verses are lost. But this Deuteronomy 139, it doesn't really go with the paragraph it's in, but it talks about when the children of Israel refused to go into the promised land. You remember that? Why did they not go in? Can somebody tell me what was the reason they refused to go into the promised land when Joshua and Caleb and the other 10 spies came back? Give me an emotion. What was the emotion they were feeling? Fear. Yeah. And God talks to them and he says, your little ones, which you said would be a prey, your children that you thought would die if we went into the promised land, guess what? They're going in and you're not. Now, I think it's better to serve with our family than to not serve and have the Lord call our family and then just watch from the distance as they serve, right? Let's serve together. Let's train our children how to serve. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So serving together passes on the mission. God has given us a mission, and when we serve together as a family, it passes on that mission. Matthew, let me see, read the wrong verse. Hold on. Deuteronomy 6:7 says, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. 4 different times when it is a good time to talk to your kids about the Lord. So basically, as you're doing your everyday stuff, that's what it's saying, as you're doing your everyday stuff, that's when you're passing on that mission to your kids, is when you're doing that everyday stuff with them. So when you're serving together, when you take the time to do something together as a family, it opens up opportunities to talk. It opens up opportunities. Why are we doing this, Mom? You know, there's a church work day in June here at Tabernacle. And so they encourage you to bring your children to help with the church work day. So if your children are here, you're here, let's say they have you painting a wall and you're kind of helping them help, or they're sitting with you or watching, and they're like, Mom, why are we doing this? You can say, well, this is God's house, and we want it to look nice. And this is where we tell people about Jesus, and we want those people to not be worried about walls that have scratches, or, we want them to be able to focus on the Lord. And so you're able to pass on the mission of why you're doing what you're doing. Then Psalm 103, this is totally the wrong verse. I have no idea how I wrote that wrong reference down, but it's 103:17, if you want to mark that one out and change it. Psalm 103:17 talks about how passing on the Lord's righteousness to the children's children. So do we want our mission? Do we want the mission to go to our grandchildren? Do we want them to still have a heart for the Lord? Or do we want, after our kids to graduate, we have kids and we have extra kids at our house. We have Parkers and we have extra Parkers. And I can tell you, it breaks my heart when my extra Parkers, who have served alongside me, and I have taught them as if they were my children, it breaks my heart to see those extra Parkers not in church, not serving the Lord, not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. It breaks my heart, and it would break my heart if my children did that. We don't want to lose the children. We don't want to lose the grandchildren. We want that mission to be passed on. My grandfather was a bootlegger when he was 40 years old, during Prohibition. And, I can tell you stories of the revenuers coming after him, and about getting himself killed, and dropping off liquor on the city courthouse steps to the corrupt leaders in Chattanooga. I can tell you their family name, and they were still in power when I was a kid. But I can tell you all about that. He was a mess. And the Lord got a hold of him, saved him, completely changed him, and made him a tent revivalist. And his son became a pastor. And that's my dad, and I am your teacher. And my children want to serve the Lord. And isn't that what we want? We want to pass that down from generation to generation. And so serving together helps to pass on that mission. Barna, you can look up Barna and the statistics. Barna is a surveyor. And children who are involved in the church stay in church. Okay? And I don't mean they come on Sunday morning. I mean they come Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, revival services. And not only do they just come to church, they don't just come to church, but they help. They sing in the choir, they play in the orchestra, they help with VBS, they participate in youth night. It's those kids who stay in church. The vast majority of when they grow up, and if they decide what they're doing, it's those kids who stay in church. So you want to get your children involved. And I want to say that your primary area of service should come out of the church, okay? Your primary area. Yes, I believe in 4-H. I do. Our kids were involved in 4-H for a long time until it just got to be where I was running both ends and couldn't handle it anymore. I believe in 4-H. I believe in community sports as long as your kids are in church. I believe in these different areas. I think you should be involved in helping with the local food bank. And just to tell you, this Saturday, they were asking for volunteers. Starts at 10 o'clock, Saturday morning at the fairgrounds. They need a volunteer. So why not? Go and help. You can be a blessing. You can help. But I believe in the community events. I believe in it, and we're going to talk about that later. But your primary service should come out of the church, because the purpose of our service is to draw men to Jesus. That's the purpose. So we're trying to get them connected to the church so that they continue to serve the Lord as they get older. Exodus 20, when it talks about observing the Sabbath day, it's very specific about who should be in church. It says your sons, your daughters. It doesn't just say your kids. It says your sons, your daughters, just in case you were thinking just bring the boys to church. Just in case that's what you were thinking. That's not what it says. It says your sons, your daughters, and there are some people who get a little confused about religion and think it's only for the men and the women have to sit in a room off by themselves. Well, that's not what the Lord said. He said bring your sons and your daughters. Get your kids involved in church. All of your kids involved in church. So it's very specific. 1 Samuel, we're going to talk about children who get to know those who serve in full-time Christian service will volunteer for full-time Christian service. That's another statistic that you can look up, and I didn't have time to look up statistics. But it's another statistic that I've read that children who are involved with meeting, knowing, getting to know people who are in full-time Christian service are more likely to volunteer for full-time Christian service. And I can tell you in my life, this is very true. I remember many times having pastors and leaders in the church denomination that we were in, missionaries in our home. These people were in our home, and they encourage you to want to do that. You hear their stories about what God has done. Open up your home. It doesn't have to be perfect. The soffit on the front of our house is hanging down and looks awful. And there's like a bird living in it or something. And I'm pretty sure there's a raccoon in the attic. It doesn't have to look perfect. Your house doesn't have to look perfect, but open it up in hospitality, particularly to God's servants. And if you look in the Bible, there are many examples of how this worked. Paul mentored Timothy. Somehow his mom made sure he got connected. Timothy got connected to Paul. And as a result, Timothy went into the ministry. Barnabas mentored John Mark, who was apparently not a very fun person to mentor because Paul had enough of him and sent him on his way. But Barnabas is like, I'm going to stick with him. I'm going to mentor him. John Mark wrote a book of the Bible. He wrote Mark. Okay? So when our children know full-time Christian servants, they are much more likely to go into full-time Christian service. My dad was in full-time Christian service. I remember, boy, I should not have said this, telling the Lord, I don't want to be a pastor's wife, and I don't want to be a teacher, because my dad was both. And the Lord's like, I was a pastor's wife at one point. My husband was the music pastor here. And I've taught in a Christian school, and I teach you guys, and I teach all the time. In fact, the Lord called me to teach. He gave me a verse, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, and I couldn't ignore that. Okay, so I need to teach. He gave me that verse. But if you are involved with people who are in full-time Christian service, you are much more likely to volunteer for full-time Christian service. So get those people in your home. We have a unique opportunity here when we have missions conference where you can sign up to do a meal for the missionaries. You can do it here. You don't even have to do it at your house. You can do it here, and you can set up the tables like we do for gyms. I mean, there's not that many missionaries. There's probably 3 or 4 families, and usually they don't bring the whole family. And you can make them a meal, and you can sit your kids down beside them while they eat, and they can hear their stories, and it makes a huge difference. That's the main reason why I started Ladies Missionary Tea at Tabernacle. The main reason we have Ladies Missionary Tea is because I want those girls to get to know the missionary wives. And as a result, 2 of our young ladies who grew up coming to Missionary Tea are missionaries. And I think it's worth it. It's worth the hassle, and I have to tell you, it is a hassle. Every year, the devil does something different when I get ready for Missionary Tea, and to the fact that I dread it. I'm like, do I really want to deal with this year? You know, do I really want to worry about this? You know, I told you about the morning that we did Ladies Missionary Tea, and I get a phone call that Mrs. Wesco, who had just been there the year before, that her husband had just gotten shot in Cameroon. I mean, that just blows a hole in your spirit as you're getting ready for Ladies Missionary Tea. And things like that happen. But I believe it's worth it, because if these girls spend time, and I remember Lynette Steinbart saying she sat beside Mrs. Doon, and Mrs. Doon was talking to her about trusting the Lord, and He will help you, and encouraging her. So it's worth it to have your children spend time with Christian servants. Serving together nourishes the family. Children reap the benefits of time spent with the family. If you make a point to set aside time to serve in the church, through the church, some way, if you make a point to do that, then you're spending time together, right? And spending time together holds families together. And I'm asking you to not wait until your kids are teenagers to do that. I'm asking you to drag your babies. I remember when my husband was music pastor and Ann was born, and I think she must have been born the week before Easter. I'm pretty sure she was born the Sunday before Easter, because she was teeny tiny in her carrier, and we're doing the Easter program. Teeny tiny, sitting in the back in her carrier while we're doing the Easter program. So I'm asking you to bring your babies with you. At a young age, get them used. I grew up in the church. It hurts me to not be here. I knew the church as well as I knew my home. In fact, at one point, the church was in our home. The school was in our home. I just walked to the next room, and there was the learning center, and there was, where we went to school, and there's where we had church. But I grew up in the church. Let your children grow up in ministry. Let them be in the ministry from the time they're babies, helping, cleaning the church, feeding the missionaries, whatever it takes, doing the music. Get your kids involved in church. It says children learn family values. These things I actually looked up on the internet, and they weren't Christian service. This was just service. If you serve with your family, these things popped up. They learn your family values. The Lord says in Genesis 18 that He knows Abraham. Abraham will command his children and his household after him to do justice and judgment. The Lord said, I know Abraham's going to teach his kids. He's going to teach them. So your children learn your family values. When you spend time serving together, they see what's important to you. And they learn your values. And they're ready to serve the Lord with you. They make sweet memories. Because I was a pastor's kid, all of my memories revolve around the church. All of them. And your memories can revolve around the church. And guys, I've been in Jim's ministry for 20 years. Come the fall, it will be 20 years. My babies have been crawling around on the floor while I was doing this, setting up, putting the tablecloths on. They were crawling around the floor. My babies have pulled the tablecloths off. It happens, and it's okay. But the babies are learning to serve the Lord. My children can set this up. If I couldn't come because I was sick, I could, and my kid was available, they could do this. They could set it up. In fact, it wasn't just my kids, but one of my extra Parkers, Todd, was one of my helpers. He had a free hour, couple of free hours, and so Todd Dole would help me set up in here. And there was at least twice where I was not here and Todd Dole set up the entire gym, the gym's meeting. He set it all up, did the decorating, did it all himself. I said, when you go to get married, let me know and I will give you a personal recommendation to this girl. And you know what he is now? He's foreman of a construction company. So what he learned here, I guarantee you he uses there. I guarantee you. So the things that you learn help you and they build sweet memories. And I just love, whenever I see Todd, I get a hug, we have sweet memories together of setting up and doing crazy things. And Jeremy Knopfsinger one time came in and helped me. we were trying to hang lights over the table, and we're standing on the table because we don't have a ladder. And we're standing on the table trying to hang the lights, and one light was out. And Jeremy is checking every single light bulb because we didn't think to check it before we put them up there. So I have these memories with Jeremy Knopfinger when he was the pastoral assistant of us trying to figure out which light was not working so that we could get the lights to work. And we got them to work eventually. But you have sweet memories together. As I put on here the Disney trip. When our church was, my dad, in one of the churches that my dad was in, my uncle was in that church, and bless his heart, he was poor as a church mouse. The devil was really working on him. He had gotten right with the Lord, and he was bound and determined that he was going to do right, and he was going to have his family in church on Sunday. But unfortunately, he was the manager of a fast food restaurant, which pretty much means he ain't going to make it to church on Sunday. But he quit his job and went to work for my uncle doing floors, my great uncle doing floors. He quit his job so that he could have his family in church on Sunday. He was so poor that he had the door of his car wired together and he had to crawl in through the window. I mean, it was bad. It was bad. Well, my dad just decided, my dad has ideas. I get that from him. But he just had this like wild idea that the whole church was going to go to Disney World together. The way our school was set up, we had fall break. So we went all year long, and we just would go a semester, take a few weeks off, go a semester. And so he decided that the whole church was going to go to Disney World. And everybody could afford it except my Uncle Joel and his family, who can't even afford to fix the car door. And all of us in the church, including me, a kid, 13-year-old probably, pitched in. I gave all the money I had been saving for souvenirs. I gave my money so my Uncle Joel could go on that church. We had great memories. We did all get the flu when we got there. But until we got the flu, we were having great memories. But we had a blast together. And I got to see the Lord. You know, I didn't get the flu. And I really believe the Lord honored the fact that I gave him my money so that my aunt and uncle could go. But you know, that was such a blessing to my aunt and uncle. And do you know that my uncle is very wealthy now? He runs his own flooring company. He every year redoes the floor for the railroad in Chattanooga. And if you know anything about Chattanooga, you know that railroads are important to Chattanooga. And he redoes the floors. He's helped build the church that he's in. The Lord took what we did, encouraged my uncle, and the Lord made sweet memories and changed my aunt and uncle, encouraged them to keep going, to keep staying the course. And, you know, so sweet memories. The Lord uses sweet memories. The Lord uses serving together to build character. 2 Peter 1 talks about, we did this during Bible school where we talked about we add to this virtue, add to your virtue, you know, add to faith virtue, add to virtue knowledge. Well, the last two things in that list are brotherly kindness and love. Okay, well, does anybody know if you can have brotherly kindness and love without doing something about it? Don't you need to do something to show that? And so service builds character. Children learn to work for the joy of serving. I got to thinking about in Exodus where the children of Israel, they actually gave the stuff for the tabernacle willingly. The Lord worked in their hearts, and so they gave their jewelry. They worked really hard. They made the curtains. They gave their jewelry, and people stepped up to the plate and helped make everything, and they made the whole tabernacle. They did it. They didn't send it out for somebody else to do it. The children of Israel did it. They worked together and made that beautiful tabernacle. And the Lord said it was because they had a willing heart. So when we serve together, our children learn to be willing. They learn to do it just for the joy of doing it, because you don't really get anything back from serving in the church or serving people who can't give you anything in return. Now, I will tell you that you will get something in return. We have worked with extra parkers. I remember one young man in particular. that his mama was poor as a church mouse. She could not afford to pay us to watch him. So I said, we'll just watch him for free. So don't worry about it. Don't even worry about it. Well, she ended up marrying a farmer, and he's not wealthy, but he's got money. He's got money in the bank anyway. And when the transmission went out on our car, they gave us $1,000 to help fix it. I never would have expected that. So when I was doing that, they didn't have 2 cents to rub together. But the Lord turned it around and used it to be a blessing to us. So the Lord will use service. You learn to love those you serve. Paul talked about how the things that people gave him were like a sweet savor, and then he talked in Colossians about how that his heart was knit together with the people of Colossae, and he hadn't even met them. So you can serve people and have never met them, and you can do that with missionaries. We serve our missionaries. Many of our missionaries I've never met, but our hearts are knit together. And when they send a note back and say, you were such a blessing to my college student, when you sent that care package to them, it was such a blessing to me, our hearts are knit together. So the Lord can use that to help you learn to love the people that you serve. They learn perseverance and service, even when it's not appreciated. And I don't want you to get the idea that it's all going to be roses when you serve. I wish it was. But it's not. It's hard, and people are mean. And I hate to say this, but the meanest people are your brothers and sisters in Christ. They are. They are mean. And it's discouraging. But do you remember Joseph? His own brothers throwing him in a pit and then selling him as a slave? Of course, then he gets to the end of the life, and the Lord has completely turned the table around, and they're like, okay, what are we going to do? And they go, and we're sorry. And he said, it's okay, you meant it for evil, but God turned it around for good. And your children learn to persevere when things are hard. I wish it wasn't hard. I wish people would understand and get behind you when you're trying to do something instead of getting in the way. I hate it when people are standing in the way, and I'm like, could you just, please, just over here, please.
Better than me, I'm like, move.
Yeah. And I hate it when they do that, but they're going to do it. But when you do that with your children, and my children, they know who the people are. I hate that. I hate that they know that, but they know. And they still serve, and they learn, and whenever something happens, we just say, okay, so what did we learn from that? So we talk about how that if it's our turn, we're not going to do that because it's not very nice. So we learn, and we learn that we don't treat people that way, and it makes a big difference, and hopefully my kids won't grow up to be the ones always standing in somebody's way when it's time to get something done. That does happen. And then children learn not to focus on themselves. The Bible says in Philippians 2:4, look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. They learn it's not about me, it's about the Lord. That's what they learn. Then they learn that the world, they learn to focus on others. They learn to overcome shyness. Now here's something, you guys really not going to believe this, but I'm actually a very shy person. I know I'm loud when I get going, and I have a lot to say when I get going, but I actually prefer to be by myself in the quiet, not talking to anybody. I prefer that. And I hate calling people on the phone. I hate putting myself out there. But guess what? I learned from my dad that you must put yourself out there. You have to be bold. You just have to do it. You have to get the job done. I learned it by walking the streets of Rossville, Georgia, selling Krispy Kreme donuts for a fundraiser. Dad would be in the car, hand you a box of donuts, go in there and ask them if they'll buy donuts. So you'd have to walk in and you'd have to say, would you like to buy a dozen donuts? Now, I didn't realize this, but kids are really cute, so it's very hard to say to a kid, no, I don't want to buy a dozen donuts. I mean, it's donuts and it's a kid, so they'll pay too much money. Now, it's like $12 a dozen. Back then, it was $2 a dozen. It's pretty sad. But that's the way I learned it. I learned it at 5 years old when my mama put me up on the stage. And I sang, just any day now, the Lord is coming. Just any day now, His face I'll see. My first solo in church. But when your children serve, when you put them out there, they learn boldness. And isn't boldness a requirement for getting the gospel out? It's important. And so they learn not to be shy. They learn that the world doesn't revolve around them. I would like for you to take these verses and go by yourself, go through them with yourself, go through them with your family. But Romans 12 is the perfect chapter about service. But verse 3 says, not to think of themselves more highly than they ought to think. That you teach your children that the world doesn't revolve around them. So don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to think. Now, it does say more highly than you ought to think. So you ought to think that you're worth something. You ought to think that. Your children ought to think that they're worth something. And serving develops confidence. But they ought not think that they're more of something than the other Christian who's working. That's where the strife comes in. They ought not to think more highly. My job is not more important than someone else's job. My ministry is not more important than someone else's ministry. So it's really important for them to learn that. They learn valuable skills. They learn the hard skills. You remember that in Mark 6:3 it says the Pharisees were talking and they were like, is this not the carpenter, Mary's son? He had learned hard skills with his dad. He learned how to be a carpenter. And when you serve, bring your kids, you learn how they learn the hard skills that they need and they will use later in life. In fact, please keep a record of any service you do here or out in the community because you're going to need it when your kids are applying for scholarships. Just telling you, third one now. You're going to need to write that down. You want the Eli Lilly scholarship? The thing they prize the most is service. So you want to write that stuff down so that you know what you're doing to serve together. So you've got a record of that. They learn soft skills like time management, problem solving, all of these things that they need, getting to a place on time. They learn these soft skills when you serve together. And if you think about Daniel did not arrive in Babylon and then suddenly acquire all of those hard and soft skills that he had. Somebody taught him those. And the Bible says that the Lord used what they already knew to develop their talents and skills and ability and wisdom. He blessed them with more wisdom so that they were 10 times better than the rest of basically the scientists. That's what they were, the scientists. They were 10 times better. So let the Lord use service to help your children develop the hard skills. Serving together also strengthens the community. Yeah, and it's important. You do need at least one area of service where you're going out in the community, okay? Because we don't want to become just inside these walls. We do want to reach out. So you do need an area of service where you're working in the community. 4-H is a great thing to do that and also help you get a scholarship. If you're planning to go to Purdue, you want to be in 4-H. I'm just telling you, get them started now. Help them go all the way through if that's what you're planning. But service in the community is important, and communities that serve together, that work together, are strong communities. So find an area in your community where you can serve. Even if it's at the baseball diamond, if your kids are in softball or baseball, maybe you can volunteer to run the concession stand. And those areas of service in the community open up doors for you to minister the gospel to the community. And when people get saved, it strengthens the community. So you want that. You want to be reaching out into the community. I will give you some cautions. Balance is very important. My love language is service, and I would serve until I fall down flat, and sometimes I do. But you got to be balanced. You do need to be balanced, but you do need to put yourself out there. It's going to be busy. There's going to be laundry behind the couch, and it's fine. Just if it's clean, they can find what they need. They will be fine. If things are going to happen, you might have to eat hot dogs once a week or something. It's okay. But you do need balance. You do need the times when you are, first of all, if you're not worshiping God, if you're not spending time in God's Word, if you're too busy to worship God, you don't have anything in your cup to give to anybody else, to overflow to anybody else. You need the joy of the Lord flowing through you. Rivers of living water, Jesus said. You abide in Him, you'll have rivers of living water flowing out of you to those around you. So if you don't have time for personal worship, and that's what the story of Martha and Mary was all about. It wasn't that Martha was doing wrong serving. What she did was very necessary. It was very needed. But she had lost focus. It was time to worship. It was not time to serve. So you need that worship time. You need to care for your husband. Now, your husband needs to be involved in service, and you can tell him Mrs. Parker said so. And he can talk to me if he wants to. But your husband needs to be involved in service. You might not be able to get him to, and you may have to serve without him, but he needs to be involved. It's important. But you do need to take care of your husband. You need a date night. Probably every 2 weeks at least. Maybe more than that. You need a date night where you leave the kids with someone else, and if it's just going for an ice cream cone at McDonald's, hopefully they have the machine working. You know, you used to get 2 for $1. I don't know, but you need time with your husband. You need individual time with your children. You do need to spend time with your children. My husband has a friend who was working at a ministry in Texas, and the pastor needed help, and he demanded that they go out several times a week. I don't remember. It was too much. He demanded that they go out on visitation very often, to the point they were newlyweds, okay? Newlyweds need time together because the rest of us don't even want to watch that. They need time together. You know? Let's give them time. But no, he wanted them on church visitation like all the time, it seemed like. They ended up leaving the ministry because they felt like that the pastor had lost his focus on what was important. Family is important, but you do need to serve. And serving together is time spent together. And then you need to care for your family. You need to care for your mom, care for your mother-in-law, your father-in-law. You do need to care for family. Okay, so those are cautions. Also, I would tell you, 1 Timothy 5:10 says that a person serving the faithful children should not be accused of riot or unruly. When you're serving, know where your kids are. That they're not running in the parking lot about to get run over. Okay, know where your kids are. And I have held on tight to the wiggle worms while I was practicing the song for Sunday, or, you know, whatever. You know, you hold on, you know, you're doing like this, you know, because they're, you know, they're going around here while you're trying to sing your song and get ready for Sunday. But know where your kids are. Now, that does not mean don't put them in the nursery. That's not what it means. Sometimes your kids need to learn to deal with other people. They need to make friendships with other Christians who would remember, I remember having you in the nursery. And so they need to make friends with these people so that they can have that fellowship, because those people are important too. The mentors are important to your kids too. It doesn't mean don't ever let them out of your sight, but it does mean that you do need to know where they are and what they're doing, that somebody's watching them. So I wanted just real quick to go over the baskets. Some ways that you can serve. This basket over here is for serving the elderly. Okay? And this is an area that I wish I could get back involved in. And I don't know if they would let me back in. They would call me back, so I don't know if I can get back in. But getting into the nursing home is huge, guys. It's huge. And it not only ministers, those people may not remember you So ministry with the elderly is very important. You might just go to someone's home and minister to them there. I put a pill box in there. Do you know that a lot of people, pardon me, a lot of people are sick simply because they're not taking their medicine at the proper time? So it's very important that they take their medicine at the proper time. Another basket that we have here is a cleaning basket. Your church needs to be clean, guys. It doesn't clean itself. It needs to be clean. Somebody's got to clean it. And Mr. Matson, this is a big building. He cannot do this building all by himself. And if you go to a different church, you know, your janitor could probably not keep up with it all by himself. So, and then there are people, can you volunteer to go to someone's house? Maybe someone's dealing with cancer and the person is having to focus completely on a family member. We had this happen, and we had a lady who ran a cleaning business, and they just volunteered to come into this lady's house twice a week and clean her house, so she didn't even have to think about it. So it's a way that you can help. Children's ministry is vital. I told you we have extra parkers, and boy do we. There's a lot of them. And they spend a lot of time in our home. You can help with children's ministry at your church. You can help with children's ministry in your home. You can run a neighborhood Bible time during the summer. You can go around to the neighborhood and say, hey, on Thursday mornings at 10 o'clock, we're going to have neighborhood Bible time over at our house, and you're welcome to send your kids, and we're going to spend 2 hours together, and we're going to learn about God. You can do those things. You can say, hey, can I bring your kid to church on Wednesday night? We have Master Club. We have Wisdom Club. I'm going to put a plug in here. Wisdom Club this summer is Wisdom Club Lights Up the Night. We're going to be have a science emphasis, and we're going to be studying the life of Daniel. And we're going to start June 1st. They're going to have something the next 2 weeks, but we're going to start June 1st with this. We're going to meet at 7 o'clock. We're going to do some kind of STEM project, some kind of science experiment together. Then we're going to learn about the life of Daniel, and then we're going to learn about famous scientists who knew the Lord and how the Lord worked in their lives. So that's what we're doing this summer. But you can do something like that in children's ministry. Then we have gardening. If you can't find anybody else to help, I need help. I have black thumbs, and it's bad. But this is my new favorite plant because apparently you can't kill it. It's this silver frosty thing, and it's real soft, and it came back this year, and it was so pretty, and I was like, yay! Because I can't grow plants. But you can help. I can tell you right now, over at Edinburgh, where they're starting the new Edinburgh Christian School, there is a beautiful garden area in the middle. It's a square building, and in the middle is a beautiful garden area, and I would love to see that set up so that children could play in there. There's got these big overgrown bushes that I don't even know what you do with them because I have black thumb anyway, but it needs to be, if it's your ministry, maybe you could volunteer this summer to transform that area into a place where children could play. What would be a great place to play? We have Habitat for Humanity, building, again, Edinburgh Christian School. There's a ton of construction work that needs to be done over there. If you or your husband can do construction work and you'd like to volunteer, there's a ton of stuff that needs to be done over there. And you could help with that. You could help here. You could paint. You can do those things. You can help with Habitat for Humanity. We have Mr. Parker's cookies. I have the recipe and most of the ingredients, not all of them, but most of the ingredients. So you can make cookies. You can cook meals. You can be the person who organizes the meal train. You can be the person who organizes the hospitality. Where are the missionaries going to stay? When are they going to eat? That's something that you can do. You can be involved in ministry. I am so proud of you guys. All of you are service oriented. I sense that. You come in, you help me. I see you doing things. I appreciate that. Kayla, I know, struggles physically. And she was trying to figure out, how can I serve, but I'm still struggling physically? What do I do? And she figured out, I can make cards. That's been a huge blessing to me. She made the cards for the missionary college students that we signed and sent to them. That is a huge blessing. The Lord can show you where you can serve. I'm asking you to take another step. Maybe you're in a ministry And it's time to pass that on to someone else and move up in ministry to a different area. Move that children's ministry to a young believer who can learn how to teach. Just pass that on and move up to another area where you're doing something else for the Lord. But be busy about serving the Lord is what I'm asking you to do. And I don't know how to tell you this, and I hope I don't cry. But this is my last year of serving in the GEMS ministry. My husband is going to be teaching over at Edinburgh Christian School, and we have a vision of what the Lord could do over there, and I believe the Lord wants me to help him with that vision. So I need to pass this ministry on to someone else so that I can move on to a different ministry. And I love this ministry, and I would ask that you help me pray, because I want to see a GEMS ministry in Edinburgh. That is my goal, to see that over there, a GEMS ministry over there. I would love to see that. But I'm asking you to pray for me as we move into a different area of ministry. I'm in the process of turning over my tabernacle ministries. Doesn't mean we're leaving the church, doesn't mean we're moving, unless the Lord just clearly makes that visible to us that he wants us to do that. But I feel like that my focus needs to become Edinburgh with my husband, and that we need to reach into that community. So I'm asking you to pray. And I'm asking you, if you want to help, I can find a place for you to help. I can find something for you to do. But the Lord is doing great things, and I want you to be a part of that ministry. And it is encouraging. Last night, the Lord has, it's hard. What we're doing is hard. And the Lord has had so many people in the last few weeks come up to me and say, I appreciate how you serve. They say, I appreciate every time we see you, you're serving. So it is a blessing, and people do come back to you and they do say thanks. But I want you to have that blessing too. I want you to pass on that ministry. I want you to be Titus women. I want you to be teaching. There's one verse in particular I'd like for you to look up, 1 Timothy 5:10, and it's on page 1440. It says, it's talking about why would you take a widow into the church to be supported? Why would you support a widow? Why would the church be financially and physically supporting a widow? Why would they do that? Well, first of all, it would be because they don't have any family to do that. But one of the main reasons is verse 10. It says, this is why you would take this woman into the ministry, because she's well reported of for good works. If she have brought up children, if she's lodged strangers, if she's washed the saints' feet, if she's relieved the afflicted, if she's diligently followed every good work. All of those things sound like she's busy to me. Does it sound like she's busy? And she's got her kids. You see that? She did it while she was raising her kids. So ladies, I know it's not easy. There's some days where you meet yourself coming and going. The laundry's going to be behind the couch. You might eat hot dogs. I'm sorry, it's life. But the Lord is wanting to do something amazing, and he wants you to be a part of it. Let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for this GEMS ministry and what you have done over the last year and a half, Lord, how you have worked in amazing ways to bring back the GEMS ministry.